With AI changing the world so quickly, don't you think it's not too far-fetched to eventually have robots that could love you back? This is exactly the world we find ourselves in as we follow Rikuo Sakisaka as we dive into the morality of sentient robots in the series Time of Eve. We are first introduced to an unknown but seemingly important woman receiving a phone call in her office. The man on the other side reports on the investigation of a large information leak. Supposedly, where the information leak came from and how it spread was via 5 other androids, eventually deviating unexpectedly. The woman cuts him off, commanding the operator to find the one responsible for leaking the information. Instantly, the android in question is revealed as Calvin 6, which the woman recognizes as the final project of Shiotsuki, the scientist that initially created the androids. Regardless, the operator notes how the message the androids are receiving is originating from a certain cafe. With that in mind, the woman starts tracking the exact location of this suspicious place, androids indeed. We find out that we are in a futuristic Japan, where androids and robots are a very common occurrence, with almost every person having an android as a personal servant, helping out in day-to-day tasks. Although these diligent helpers are seldom shown any gratitude. And the few humans that treat them nicely are mocked as being android-holics. Simply put, humans addicted and dependent on androids. We now switch to our main protagonist, a high school teen by the name of Rikuo Sakisaka, and his family's female android, going by the name Sammy. As Rikuo downloads Sammy's report log in his phone, he notices an unusual pop-up. Intrigued, he thinks to question Sammy about it, but upon thinking it further, he decides against it, and instead just asks for a cup of coffee. While Sammy prepares the coffee, Rikuo asks where the rest of his family is, to which Sammy promptly gives the status of his parents and his older sister Naoko, who only just got out of bed after coming home late from a drinking party. Indeed, she's an alcoholic. While Naoko hits the sofa in exhaustion from her hangover and turns on the TV. Rikuo orders Sammy to prepare some breakfast, and they then both start watching the report on android holics, with Naoko joking that Rikuo should be careful and keep his actions secret, but he just retorts in confusion. Later, while at school, Rikuo can't help but revisit the strange message from Sammy's log, referring to something by the name of Eve. Meanwhile, Rikuo's best friend Masakazu Masaki arrives. While making some small talk, he enters through the window, like any normal student, and berates Rikuo for trusting androids so much. But Rikuo denies that, instead referring to the 3 absolute laws of robotics. The first law being that robots must protect humans and not injure them. Unconvinced, Masaki reminds him to at least think more into it since he has an android at home, but Rikuo jokes about how worried he is about robots, even though Masaki's family is one of the few to now own an android. Switching topics, Rikuo asks for his friend's opinion on the strange message from Sammy's travel log. Masaki doesn't think much of it, but Rikuo drags him along to investigate nonetheless. And soon enough, the two find themselves at the location from which that strange message came from. Outside the building, the two friends look around in confusion, but once an android pushes past them and enters the building, they build up their courage and enter as well. Once inside, the duo is stunned to see that they entered an underground cafe called Time of Eve, where humans and robots are treated as equal and no discrimination is tolerated. Looking around, we see a handful of customers enjoying themselves. And as the two friends read the sign at the entrance, the cheerful bartender Nagi welcomes them to her cafe, prompting them to take a seat and she'll come to take their orders. While sitting down, Masaki notes how the rule at the entrance of the cafe is dangerous, and under current laws it can be considered a grey area. Meanwhile, Rikuo looks around and notices that the android they saw at the entrance is present. However, his ring isn't present above his head anymore. Masaki is surprised as well, knowing that an android not showing his ring is a serious law violation, since they can't be told apart from humans now. Soon, Nagi comes taking their order, while the two students keep discussing how unusual this cafe and its customers are, since they could all be androids. A small figure pops up, startling them. Akiko, a happy-go-lucky girl very curious about meeting our protagonist duo. While asking them tons of questions, Akiko introduces the rest of the regulars in the cafe and herself. Koji and Rina, the two lovebirds, Shime, the elderly foster parent of Chie, the little girl that likes to act like a cat, and Satoru, the lonesome and brooding man that spends most of his time reading. After the brief intro, Rikuo asks Akiko if she's seen a female android around. But Nagi interrupts them, giving Rikuo a demerit point for breaking the cafe's rule. Masaki guesses that Akiko might be an android. However, when Akiko returns after comforting Nagi, Masaki asks her about the outside world and if she has androids at her home. Akiko happily says she does, and that's why she's here, since she wants to find out more about the other side and connect with them. Shockingly, the next day while at school, Rikuo spots Akiko walking in the hallway. As she looks back at him, Rikuo is horrified to see that Akiko has the ring above her head, and she is revealed to have been an android all along. Back home, Sami serves Rikuo coffee like usual, but he's shocked that the coffee tastes just like the one from the cafe he's visited yesterday, and is stunned to learn that Sami changed the coffee she served independently without him giving the order to do so. Angered, Rikuo asks why she made that decision by herself, wondering if she wants to mimic humans now, but Sami refutes, confirming that she's an android. Hearing this, Rikuo thinks back to Akiko's words and realizes that when she said that she wanted to understand and connect with the other side, she meant humans. Now at school, Rikuo asks Masaki to recite the remaining 2 laws of robotics, those being to obey commands from humans unless this contradicts the first rule, and the last being to protect its own existence as long as it doesn't conflict with the first or second law. However, with that said, Masaki notes how there isn't a law against androids lying, so nothing they say can be 100% trusted. And knowing that Sami is out on errands today, the two decide to visit the cafe and see if Sami lied about visiting Time of Eve. The plan was initially to wait for Sami's arrival and question her, but Chie's prank of hiding Rikuo's glasses diverted the duo's attention. When Akiko arrives, she assures Rikuo that his glasses would be returned at some point. Meanwhile, Masaki leaves to pursue Satoru, while another customer speaks with Nagi. Shimei explained that androids sometimes keep secrets to protect their loved ones, which Rikuo found out the hard way. When Rikuo gets his glasses back from Nagi, he discovers that the customer that had been speaking with her was his own android all along. Sami then bolts from the cafe scared out of her wits, while the door shuts behind her, allowing her to flee unimpeded. Nagi then comforts and calms Rikuo down by telling him to think about Sami's feelings before acting on his impulses. Rikuo decides to not pursue Sami after the door is unlocked. He later returned home and thanked Sami for the delicious coffee she made for him. Nagi set Rikuo and Masaki up on a date with the cafe's regulars Koji and Rina after noticing Rikuo's intense stare at Rina's impressive assets. They assumed one of them was human and treated the situation as if it were an android-human relationship. However, as the conversation progresses, Koji and Rina get into a fight after it's revealed that Koji has another partner. To console them, Rikuo and Masaki split up, but they discovered that both Koji and Rina were androids in a relationship all this time, and neither knew the other was an android. An ancient and damaged android model walks into the cafe one day. When Rikuo and Masaki question it, they discover that it had forgotten its own name, the address where it worked, and the name of the child it was caring for. A logical error then causes the android to burn its circuit and shut down. Nagi concludes that the android must have been abandoned illegally so that the owners could avoid paying the fee for its return to the manufacturer, and in the process, they wiped all of their personal data to prevent anyone from discovering their identity and tracking them down. Masaki tells Rikuo about an android in development that is designed to take care of and raise children, with Shimei suspected as the android in question. When Rikuo went to the cafe by himself, he discovered that Shimei had left Chie alone as part of a monthly trip he's forced to make. Rikuo tries to press Chie for more information, but Akiko stops him, since she's only a child and he's troubling her. Satoru notes that Rikuo's actions couldn't be avoided since humans naturally inflict harm on those around them. Rikuo then dozes off, only to awaken and hear Sami playing a song he had played when he was little on the cafe's piano. Rikuo explains that he had stopped playing because he would have been devastated if Sami had mastered the piano and became better than him. But since he's already come this far, he decides that he doesn't care any longer and begins to play passionately. Shimei returned and expressed his gratitude to Rikuo for his performance and for making little Chie smile. Flashing back to when Masaki's father, Atsuro, overhears their robot, THX, console Masaki about his and his wife's marriage issues. Angered by this, Atsuro orders THX to never speak to Masaki again. Currently, the Ethics Committee intends to crack down on establishments that encourage inappropriate human-android interactions. For the initial investigation, they intended to send out undercover androids. Rikuo invites Masaki back to the cafe, but he is turned down. And in a fit of annoyance, Masaki decides to tell his father about the cafe. But when he returns home, he finds out that THX has strangely left the house on its own. He then gets a call from Rikuo and discovers that THX is currently at the cafe, warning people about the Ethics Committee. So he instantly rushes over. When the Ethics Committee's undercover android enters the cafe, THX instantly recognizes it. So in an attempt to protect Masaki, it defies its orders not to speak and confronts the android, causing it to flee. THX tells Masaki that it always wanted to be by his side and protect him, but that it was never allowed to speak to him by his father. Masaki, moved by THX's loyalty, hugs the android, realizing that he had been wrong about it all along, and decides to return home with him, making up an excuse to his father that it had helped him with something. While Masaki struggles to carry THX on the stairs, Nagi notes how she loves all of her customers and is glad that they can all spend time together at the cafe. Now in the unknown woman's office once more, Satoru, who turns out to be one of her subordinates, questions if he should have taken a more active approach. But she states that him being present was all that mattered and he doesn't need to worry anymore. She then shows Satoru an unredacted article about a little girl oddly resembling Nagi, and wonders if that little girl is still alive. Sometime later, back at the cafe, Rikuo and Nagi joke around, but soon enough a new customer walks in. As Nagi goes to welcome them, Rikuo reflects how everything that happened so far was only the beginning and so much more would ultimately happen. But that's a story for another time. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.